I thought I should have a talk called Heroes of Science, Survival of a Whistleblower. I gave that talk at the Max Planck Institute for Human Development in Berlin this summer. Little did I know that in a few months' time it would be death of a whistleblower and not survival. I was asked to go to Berlin to explain young people from different sciences, how do you survive for so many years as I have done, speaking truth to power? I told them how, and still didn't know that my time was up very soon after that. I have constructed a website now, and scientificfreedom.com was already taken. I haven't studied what they are doing, but that's not us. So it's Scientific Freedom DK that was not taken, and that's us. And then I got a new email, again called scientificfreedom.dk, PCG, Peter Christian Gøtzsche, that's my name. So write to me if you did not receive my recent book about the Cochrane scandal. Many of you have received it, but I don't have emails from all of you. So just write to me and I'll send you the book so you can read about a real horror story. It's really a horror story. Now, the talk is on YouTube from Berlin this summer. And of course, you will have this information later. We will put up slides, and this has been filmed. So it will also come on YouTube, what people have talked about today. So instead of focusing on what happened in the recent past, I thought it's better that I tell you a little about what the Institute will do. That can open up the discussion. So what is our mission statement? We have not really met before today. So we have just corresponded by email. But we agreed that the Institute should have 3 visions, which you might have seen. All science should strive to be free from financial conflicts of interest. All science should be published as soon as possible and made freely accessible. And of course, David, we should do everything we can to make it open access. But I just read this morning on my way here on the train that the University of California pays hundreds of millions of Danish crowns every year in order to subscribe to journals and in order to pay fees for open access articles. These amounts are so extreme and obscene that one of the missions of this institute must be, we can't go on like this. So we have Bob Whittaker's website, that's for free. We have other things for free. So we'll see what we can do about it. But the whole publishing business is part of the problem. It's corrupt. It's horrible. Then point 3, all scientific data, including study protocols, should be freely accessible, allowing others to do their own analysis. It's very, very strange that people working with physics, people working with lots of other sciences, they have shared their data for decades. And who do not share their data? People who do health research. This is about our survival. I mean, whatever happened out in space billions of years ago is not equally important as surviving while we are here. And still we don't share our data. This just illustrates how rotten the whole system is. We must share our data. And it would be hugely beneficial if we did that. So the Institute's primary area of work is healthcare, but it's not the only area of work. We will try to be comprehensive. Although we can't cover everything, we can learn from other people and they can learn from us. It's not yet clear what the structure the Institute will have. As long as the only kind of money we have is the crowdfunding I set up based on advice from Peter Breggin, we will have to use that in the coming period, but that's not very much. And that would be eaten up very quickly if we start publishing papers in Elsevier journals and so on. Oh my God, it would go away overnight almost. If we raise enough core funding, we have discussed that this institute might likely become a foundation. So one of the things we should do is to find out how do we attract really big philanthropic funders for this, because it seems so right what we are doing. So we should be able to sell our ideas to some people. And of course, I also hope that Bob, Peter, and I get these wonderful emails from patients who said, I wasted 15 years of my life, but then I read one of your books and decided to take my fate in my own hands. And I started withdrawing my many drugs. And then I discovered there was a whole life waiting for me there. I am so grateful. So I'm just waiting for a billionaire who had this experience, or his wife, who can then bestow our institute with a huge amount of fund. I hope it will happen. But we have to be active, of course, ourselves. Actually, some people have already been quite nice to me based on my recent fate, people I had never heard about. So we will continue our crowdfunding, of course. And I have made a few preparations. The idea was that I should head this institute, and Marianne DiMasi and Tom Jefferson accepted to be deputy directors, and there are very few names mentioned here, affiliated researchers and supporters, like filmmaker Anahit Testa Pedersen, who is here, one of my PhD students, a psychologist, Anders Sørensen, a webmaster, Jacob Christensen, Kim Bosen, another PhD student, and Jock McLaren, a psychiatrist in Brisbane, in Australia, a remarkable man who has this thesis that almost everything in psychiatry starts with anxiety. Even when people say they are depressed, if you start asking them what happened the last 20 years for you, then you very often find out it started with anxiety. That became worse. And if that limits your possibilities in life, sooner or later you get depressed. As Peter has taught me, people are mainly depressed because they live depressing lives. And I agree with that, Peter. It's nothing about chemicals in the brain, of course. Yeah, so we hope there will be many more people helping us and becoming involved and mentioned on our website. Then I have suggested a small advisory board that I even haven't talked to my colleagues about, so I hope they won't be too unhappy. But Abel Novoa, who is president of No Gracias in Spain, has accepted to be there. Carl Hennigan, director of Center for Evidence-Based Medicine in the UK. David Hammerstein, who just talked. Dick Bale, who is here today, president of International Society of Drug Bulletins. They decided that editors and contributors to these drug bulletins were no longer allowed to have financial conflicts of interest in relation to the drug industry. Bravo, Dick, and your colleagues. Cochrane couldn't find this out, but you did. Drummond Rennie, a long-time friend, now emeritus. He was previously one of the editors at JAMA. Margrethe Auken from the European Parliament, who is here today, and Peter Breggin, who started the whole thing by calling me one night. Yeah, I would suggest we have a very small advisory board, because the idea is just that we have some people we can ask for advice when we need advice. It's not about having meetings and I hate bureaucracy. I want to get things done. So the less bureaucracy we can have with this institute, the better. And I can tell you, then you have the right head, because I hate bureaucracy. So there will be very little bureaucracy. Now, the overall purpose is very simple: to preserve honesty and integrity in science with the aim of developing a better healthcare, where more people will benefit and fewer will be harmed by the interventions they receive. We saw something about the damage earlier today. I have calculated, based on several independent studies, that our drugs are the third leading cause of death after heart disease and cancer. And yet nobody does anything. That's life. The third leading cause of death are our prescription drugs. And most of these people who died didn't even need the drugs that killed them. It's such a tragedy. You know how often, it's just broken, as David Hammerstein said. Our whole system is broken. We can't trust what gets published, and there are conflicts of interest everywhere. Selective publication of data, so we need to work against that. We will lobby for changes in laws, regulations, and practices, also on a supranational level, like European Union, the World Health Organization, and the United Nations. And several of you have spoken about our complaint to the European Ombudsman. It took 3 years to get the EMA open its files in 2010, and then subsequent things in the European Parliament. So this just illustrates that against all odds, we actually can achieve something if we work on it. There was a crushing majority in European Parliament for preserving the secrecy around clinical trial data. But through our efforts and others' efforts, it turned to a crushing majority in favor of openness. I have never seen this happen in politics in my whole life. You have? Oh, good, Margrethe. Yeah, but you have been in politics. I haven't. So I won't speak more about that, but now we have much more access to data than we had a few years ago in European Union, and the FDA is far behind. So those of you who are from America need to work with the FDA. Those who are from Australia, it's absolutely horrible there. How the drug agency behaves, you need to work on that, and I could just continue around the world. We will also lobby funders, ethical review committees, owners of trial registers, politicians and others with the aim of getting the data out in the open. And despite regulations requiring this, much outcome data from clinical trials are still not made available. And Goldacre and Hennigan and others showed this very recently in the BMJ, that that's still the case when they compare with the European Union Clinical Trials Register. And what kind of research will we be doing? Very much we will continue doing research on clinical study reports, and it can take years, but as Tom Jefferson has illustrated, and as we have illustrated with the HPV vaccines, if you go for the real big things that affect hundreds of millions of people in the world, then of course it's worth the effort to do it. So we better do far fewer systematic reviews and very good ones based on clinical study reports. Then we could really help the world. So we can do research on conflicts of interest for authors, editors, and journals, and evaluate their impact. But of course, we already know that it's bad. So how much more confirmatory research do we need to say, yes, the car is broken? We already know it can't run. So let's build another car, and perhaps do less of this kind of research. But sometimes it's necessary to open people's eyes still. The drug industry typically says, oh yes, but that was in the past, it has become much better. It never has, it becomes worse. Self-censorship, we have talked about that today, is very common. And unfortunately, social media, people behave like kings or gods, telling others what to do or not to do, and they press send before they even think. So this is some kind of garbage, sewage outlet, often Twitter and other social media. It's horrible how this can determine what people should do. I've often been told, don't step into this minefield, it's shark-infested water. Why do you think you know better than specialists in the area? Well, because I'm more careful. I dig deeper. That's where all the dead bodies are. You don't see patients. So, what? I read reports by people who do see patients. I don't need to see them. That would be a waste of time. Should we give talks to psychiatrists who share all their false beliefs about chemical imbalances and how good the psychiatric drugs are? When I give talks to psychiatrists, I know that by far most of them, they have wrong beliefs. Should I then say, I can't go there? I can't go and give these talks. What happens if I say I can't go there? Then I can't convince anybody about anything. And the other risk is that people can become even more radicalized when you won't talk to them. Then they feel that they are some kind of victims. They start thinking about conspiracies and all sorts of idiotic things. We need to talk to people. And this will be a challenge for our new institute because sometimes it's just too much. And there are some organizations I have decided I will not talk to. Yes? But that will be one of our difficult decisions. And now that I have taken up an interest in vaccines, should I refuse to speak at meetings where I know that some of the audience and even other speakers are firmly against vaccines for no good reason? Somehow thinking all vaccines are bad, just get the infections naturally. Should I refuse talking at such events? I think not. Because there are always people who are in the middle, who are undetermined, whom you can influence. There are always reasonable people, unless it is a totally extreme organization, in which case I wouldn't go talking. So we need to try to talk to people, and I will give talks to various people interested in vaccines, so it won't last long before I will be drawn into the social media sewage outlet and be called all kinds of foolish things. Like when I demonstrated mammography screening didn't work, the guy who did the most famous clinical trial, which was in Sweden, he said publicly that I didn't like women. Well, my wife can testify that's not correct. But these are the things we need to deal with and find our feet in relation to. Now, Peter Gøtzsche was vice president in Pfizer. He wrote the book, The Whistleblower, Confessions of a Healthcare Hitman. One of the things he wrote was that out of 233 whistleblowers, 90% were fired or demoted, 27% faced lawsuits, psychiatric or physical care, alcohol abuse, lost their homes, 17% got divorced, attempted suicide, 10%. 8% went bankrupt, but only 16% said that they wouldn't blow the whistle again. What mechanism is that? Most people are chicken. What happens in wartime? What happened in Denmark? Most people were chicken. But then there were the freedom fighters, the very few that started a resistance movement. Among them my grandfather and my stepfather. They were both taken by the Gestapo and were both supposed to be killed and were lucky to survive. So there are these few people that are not prepared to accept injustice, but they are very few. So somehow we need to give people confidence. It's a personal decision, how far can I go? But we need to give people confidence, need to give them support, and Pam very nicely suggested we must try to raise some funds for legal issues, for lawsuits, to defend people who are in real trouble, and thereby defending our institute and our views. And these whistleblower trials, they take 5 years on average. So you need really to consider carefully whether you want to enter a lawsuit. It takes, Peter, you told us very nice, it took 2 years of your life? 4 years of Peter's life. There you see. You could have used that amount of time for a much better purpose. And then finally, what does it mean to mean controversial? I hate that. I've been called controversial my whole life. And it only means that you are telling the truth, because few people like the truth, really. it can carry great cost, to be honest, to yourself and to the world. And let's fight against labeling, name-calling, like anti-vaccine, anti-psychiatry. It's absolutely ridiculous. When people say I'm anti-psychiatry, I say, no, I'm not anti-anything. I am pro-humans. And therefore, psychiatric drugs is a bad idea. Electroshock is a bad idea. Seclusion, force, whatever, it's a bad idea. It makes things worse. And then we also need to work with the language, because the other side works with the language all the time. What about efficacy and safety? Many Cochrane reviews talk about efficacy and safety of drugs. It's horrible. It means drugs can only be good for you because they are both effective and safe. What we should talk about is benefits and harms, and not benefits and potential harms, which is another bad way of expressing things, because everything has harms. So what you should talk about is maybe they do have benefits. So we should talk about potential benefits and sure harms, and not side effects. It's really trivializing things. It's just a side effect. Call it harms. Yeah. So the final words are, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have chosen the side of the oppressor. If an elephant has its foot on the tail of a mouse, and you say that you are neutral, the mouse will not appreciate your neutrality. Desmond Tutu has a wonderful accent when he explains this, that I cannot echo. And then the other one we have seen earlier today, the only necessary thing for triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And we stand for pluralistic, open scientific debate and open access to data, of course, and we need your support. So what can we do together? Now is your chance of being really innovative and tell us, what can we do, and how might you be interested in helping? There have been people in the coffee break. One, that's you, I think. Well, maybe not, but there was one who told me, two people told me they were now retiring. And I thought, great, then you have a lot of time working with us. Okay, that's it.